In the vast silence north of Alaska, under skies of steel gray, a quiet drama unfolds. Two ships, hundreds of miles from any shoreline, yet their presence echoes in capitals thousands of miles away. On one side, a cutter of the United States Coast Guard, its hull freshly polished, radar humming. On the other, a Chinese-flagged survey vessel, its deck quiet, but purpose clear. The tension, a single number, 12 nautical miles, the invisible line between sovereign waters and the wider ocean. The stakes, who controls the seafloor, who patrols the frontier, and who watches when no one else is watching. This is not a missile launch, not a carrier strike group, but a confrontation nonetheless. A standoff shaped by law, realism, and power, and the ocean itself. Welcome to the 12-mile debate. The law of the sea is written in nautical miles. For most of the 20th century, the accepted limit of a nation's territorial sea was 12 nautical miles from the baseline, roughly the distance a warship could travel from the seacoast in an hour. Beyond that lay the high seas, free for all to navigate. With the ratification of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, in 1982, new concepts emerged: the Exclusive Economic Zone, EEZ, of 200 nautical miles, and even the Extended Continental Shelf, ECS, beyond that, where a state may claim seabed rights even if surface navigation remains free. For the United States, the coastal waters off Alaska, the Bering Sea, the Arctic Ocean, and other remote zones present both opportunity and challenge. The United States Coast Guard is the nation's frontline maritime thin blue line, tasked with protecting sovereign rights, enforcing laws, and projecting presence in remote seas. Meanwhile, the People's Republic of China, increasingly global in its ambitions, has embarked on a program of scientific research vessels, deep-sea survey ships, ice-class vessels, and polar region operations. These are often labeled as research, but experts see them also as strategic tools, mapping seabeds, building presence, gathering intelligence. Where these vectors cross, U.S. sovereignty claims, Chinese global research missions, and undersea mapping, friction is inevitable. Today, we explore one such encounter: the USCG versus a Chinese survey vessel, a story of law, ships, ice, and invisible lines. In the summer of 2025, far above the Arctic Circle, the U.S. designated its northern maritime boundary, including the Extended Continental Shelf (ECS), as a zone of increasing strategic competition. On August 31st, the USCG detected a Liberia-flagged Chinese research ship, Zhongshan Dashuiji, operating approximately 230 nautical miles north of the U.S. village of Utqiagvik, Alaska. At roughly the same time, another Chinese vessel, GD, was spotted about 265 nautical miles northwest of Utqiagvik. The USCG dispatched the ice-capable cutter USCG Sea Healy, WAGB-20, accompanied by the national security cutter USCG Sea Weshi WMSL-751 and a fixed-wing HC-130J from Air Station Kodiak. Their mission: monitor, query, assert presence. The Chinese ships claimed they were conducting scientific research in international waters, a valid claim on the surface. Yet from the U.S. perspective, the seabed beneath them lay within its delineated ECS, meaning the U.S. had exclusive rights to the non-living resources of that continental shelf. The 12-mile boundary might not directly apply in this deep Arctic zone, but the symbolism resonates. How close can a foreign state's vessel operate before the literal state says, "You're too close"? The stage was set. The USCG's cutter moves slowly through the ice-studded waters. On the bridge, the senior watch officer scans his radar. The Chinese ship is staying just outside what the U.S. would consider the core continental shelf exploitation zone. But the seabed mapping equipment is deployed, and the ship's transponders appear to show it is lying to conduct survey work. The USCG pilot launches the HC-130J for a high-altitude overflight. From above, the deck of the Chinese vessel appears silent. A small boat maybe, a sensor mast maybe, but nothing overtly aggressive. The Chinese crew radios the floating cutter. "We are engaged in peaceful scientific activity." The USCG responds, "You are operating within the United States delineated continental shelf boundary. Identify your mission. We are conducting presence operations. You are under our surveillance. No weapons pointed, no collision yet. But the tension is real. The survey vessel withdraws slowly into deeper water, but remains within a corridor the U.S. considers sensitive. At icebreak points, the Healy powers through, the cutter's bow crashing ice looming large in the Arctic twilight. Every survey ping of the Chinese vessel means another map of the seabed, another possibility of strategic knowledge, undersea cable routes, mineral deposits, subsea topography favorable for submarine or sensor placement. The USCG cannot board without proper cause. International law allows innocent passage. It cannot physically force the ship away unless the vessel is violating laws. But the message is clear. You are being watched. That's the nature of the standoff. Under the law of the sea regime, a coastal state has sovereignty up to 12 nautical miles of territorial sea. It controls resource exploitation in its exclusive economic zone, EEZ, up to 200 nautical miles. For the continental shelf beyond 200 nautical miles, a state may claim seabed rights via scientific submission. In this Arctic encounter, the U.S. claims an extended continental shelf beyond the 200 nautical mile line. The Chinese vessel is operating above the seabed U.S. has delineated. International law allows surface navigation, but the seabed rights are claimed. Some U.S. officials view seabed mapping by foreign research vessels as a strategic move. On the Chinese side, Beijing emphasizes freedom of navigation and peaceful scientific research. It argues classification of seabed rights is less important than the right of all states to map the oceans. Behind the legal framing lies the geopolitics. Melting Arctic ice opens shipping lanes, access to seabed minerals, rare earths, methane hydrates, and perhaps future strategic submarine transit routes. China labels itself a near-Arctic state. For the U.S., this is not a one-off survey mission. It is a precursor to a larger pattern of peer competition at sea, not just in fleets and carriers, but in sensors, data, presence. The Chinese research ship may withdraw, but the map it made remains. The USCG may shadow, but the survey corridor persists. The 12-mile boundary thus becomes a metaphor for how close foreign research vessels can operate before a literal state feels its sovereignty is challenged. Tension builds not through a gunfight but through charts, sonar pings, distant aerial shadows, silent yet potent. The cutter is now within a few miles of the survey ship. On the USCG bridge, the watch officer hears the Chinese vessel switch off its AIS, Automatic Identification System, transponder, a subtle breach of transparency. He radios, "You are required to transmit your ID and mission. You appear to be turning off your beacon. Please respond." From the Chinese ship, "We are conducting lawful research. Our mission is scientific. We are not within any 12-mile limit and not violating any laws." The USCG crew exchanges glances. They know all too well that any physical contact at sea can escalate. A bump, a damage, a misstep in the ice could trigger a diplomatic incident. On the Chinese deck, the researchers deploy a mapping array. Below, the seafloor is bathed in sonar waves. Hours pass. The cutter maintains station, cameras trained. Suddenly, the Chinese ship turns, accelerates slowly, heading for deeper waters. The USCG follows. The two vessels track each other for an hour until the survey ship finally falls back. No shots fired, no boarding, but a message delivered. And behind that, for both sides, one thought. What happens the next time? When a deeper intrusion, a sensor on the seafloor, or a hidden autonomous vehicle is involved. The Chinese vessel ultimately left the zone of immediate contest. The USCG returned to its routine patrol. But the incident resonates. First, it reinforces U.S. recognition that presence matters. The USCG stated that the Arctic is a growing zone of strategic global competition, and that the Healy's operations demonstrate the critical need for more Coast Guard icebreakers. Second, China's actions signaled its willingness to operate in distant waters, conduct seabed research, and challenge the contours of Western-centered maritime order. The U.S. will likely respond by reinforcing patrols, adding assets, and tightening rules of engagement for remote zones. Third, the precedent. Even if no treaty was broken, the experience counts. Data collected at sea matters. Survey missions today may underpin resource rights tomorrow, submarines the day after. And for the viewer, the incident underscores a new truth. Great power competition is not always about flags in harbors, but quietly mapping the ocean floor, patrolling in distant seas, asserting invisible boundaries. The 12-mile idea may be symbolic here, but the real boundary is the one drawn in data, in presence, in the silent contest beneath the waves. In the vast emptiness of the Arctic, the sea is still sovereign, even if no one stands upon it. The cutter plows on, vigilant. The survey vessel sails away, its purpose accomplished. The world watches the big carriers and the missile tests, but sometimes the most consequential moves are made by a slow-moving icebreaker and a silent mapping ship. The 12-mile boundary is more than legal geometry. It is a threshold of respect, a test of presence, a measure of power that does not roar. When a foreign vessel crosses that threshold, deliberately or inadvertently, the ocean becomes a stage. As the ice retreats and the oceans open, new boundaries will be drawn. Not with bullets, but with sonar, sensors, craft, and silence. The question remains: who will map the future beneath the waves, and whose flag will march unseen across the seabed? Thank you for watching.